What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment, and let's talk the road to the NBA Finals. And the reason I wanted to go into it is I've done a couple throughout the year, and it's kind of like the NFL. Not much has changed because they have been planting seeds for a lot of these rivalries all year long. As far as feisty teams, if you look at Golden State and Phoenix, Golden State and Dallas, kind of to an extent, not as much. Golden State and Phoenix have been pretty crazy. You have a bunch of narratives on both sides, so I want to go into who I think's who I think's going to make the playoffs and play in isn't going to be much of a shocker because there's really, in my opinion, it's been decided. There's no surprise team that can make a run or that makes any sense. That was the only reason I wasn't sure earlier on in the year, like a team like the Kings, the Wolves. I wasn't sure they were going to make the playoffs again. Like at the beginning of the year, I really wasn't too sure on the Wolves, which is a funny thing because in the West we got. If you watch my video from the beginning of the year, I believe I could be wrong, but of the teams that are going to make the playoffs, on the East side we didn't do so good. I think we're going to be playoff slash play in. I'll say so. Of those 10 teams, I think we're going to finish 7 out of 10, maybe 8. I did have the the Raptors not making it, the Nets not making it, but I had the Pistons getting in there, and I actually had the Wizards getting in there on the Eastern side. I did not have the Magic making it in, and I thought that the Bulls were gonna fall out and not make the play-in. So nothing crazy there. On the West side, what's funny is, and you can watch this back, if you don't take my word for it, I had the Timberwolves not making the playoffs. I had the Spurs getting in there, and I thought it was going to be like them in Dallas as like play-ins or something like that. But outside of getting basically the team that I thought was going to make the play-in, the Spurs, having the worst record in the West, or not the West, yeah, the West, and the team that I thought would not get in, Minnesota, arguably might finish with the best, which is a hilarious miss. And I thought the Pistons were going to do pretty good. Again, I said they were going to surprise people, so I didn't really lie there. Outside of like those like 3 takes, we really nailed the playoffs. Like I said, on the Western side, we're looking to go 9 out of 10, and I'm going to go into exactly why I liked so many of these teams. So this isn't an exact. I just kind of I went and ran through the season, the month or two left, and went with the standings that I think make sense to get some very interesting matchups. So you see I have the Magic actually finishing with a play-in here. Right now that's not the case. I just don't think the Pacers are going to be a play-in. I've said all year long, I think they're going to be a 5-6 seed. The Sixers could also go on a big losing streak, which would make a lot of sense because if the Sixers fall off enough, obviously you got Sixers, Bucks, you have a lot of possibilities. So I do think, and I said this at the beginning of the year, maybe not the very beginning, but I made a playlist for my NBA, and I went into how I said the Denver Nuggets are probably going to have the best record in the West and the Celtics in the East. And that's not exactly a Nostradamus take. It was just the fact that I think Denver, again, has to be that team. They have to be this unbeatable team that when a team is to beat them, that team just took the championship from, the best guys around. Not like Denver just got lucky, won a championship. As we saw tonight, they're just last night. They're just being pushed as an unstoppable force because of Jokic. And in the East, again, the Celtics, we called this beginning of the year, they were going to have the best record because everybody thought it was going to be the Bucks. And again, my records, you see I have a couple games missed here. That's not really the important thing. Again, I lined this up to get the matchups that I think make sense. Now, what does that leave us? That leaves us what I think is the most apropos play-in of all time. So we got the Eastern side. We got the Knicks are going to match up with the Magic, and we're going to get the Bulls and the Hawks. And I'm just going to knock these out right now because you guys should know my opinion. There's absolutely no reason they wouldn't give JB a run. There's no reason they're not going to give the Knicks some kind of run. And the Hawks, they're getting behind Snyder at least, Quinn Snyder, the coach. And they're kind of teasing that they're better off without Trey. He could come back, make a playoff run. They could do a million things. If these two match up, they're an interesting rivalry. I just don't think the Magic or Bulls are going to do anything. Bulls and Hawks aren't doing anything. That's why I thought at the beginning of the year it made sense for a team like the Pistons, a team like the Wizards, just an up-and-coming team. And now JP's doing. JP's kind of vindicating me because you cannot find an ESPN post about JP where he's not getting clowned on. And on multiple occasions, I went into how I think he's going to be maybe not a superstar, but he's going to be a star. And I do think that he will be a pivotal part of whether it's the Wizards going forward and they get a guy or two or he gets traded. I think he's going to be a much better player than people thought. Just a few months ago, people were literally talking about this guy being Ben Simmons, and I just don't think that's the case. Seeming to get the Russell Westbrook treatment. Anyway, this is what I believe is very apropos. Two very big rivalries. And more so than the rivalries is what we have here with Golden State and the Lakers. They did a stat, and they always plant these seeds. They'll put them out like multiple times. They do it with LeBron James all the time. They do it with a lot of teams. But if we could get essentially we got 8 championships between LeBron and Curry, and there was a stat that they showed how basically either LeBron or Curry has been in the finals, not every year, but essentially like every year outside of like 2 for the last decade. It's something pretty crazy. I might be a little wrong, but it was a pretty crazy stat. And how LeBron was in like the conference finals against the Warriors with the Cavs, and then he went with the Lakers. Like it was some weird stat, but I think people would agree that these two teams that a lot of people have as perennial finals, contenders, meeting up in the play-in is just too good not to pull the trigger on. So that's genuinely what I think we're going to get here. Just because I think that makes the most sense. And if you look at my other play, and we get Dallas and Phoenix, and that Phoenix would have to drop a little bit. I gave them a couple L's, but I think the Kings are going to flip them for that reason. Now the Kings, sure, they could just play Phoenix or Dallas or whoever gets the 7 seed, and if that were the case, I think Sacramento is going to lose. But I think this is just so much better, and I think it's apropos. Obviously, there's a little bit of ritualistic penances going on when you have these guys playing in the play-in. But at this point, they keep talking about it, and they're talking about like the Lakers making the play-in, not as much the Warriors, and they're not talking about the other 2 teams at all. So if you put these 4 teams in the play-in, I just think it would be absolutely hilarious. That's just my opinion on the matter. Again, I could be wrong. But that's just kind of what I think we get. Now you see with this sequence, if we go with the Lakers and the Mavericks, it leaves us with the Lakers and the Suns in the next round. Okay? If you go Golden State and the Mavericks, it gives us Golden State and Phoenix in the next round, which would mean that the Lakers would be eliminated. And then if I'm just showing you this is how I went about doing it. And then if you go with the Lakers and the Suns, you wind up with this. Lakers playing Dallas, and the Warriors would be eliminated. Anyway, I do think one of these teams, because again, 3 of the 4 teams are going to advance, so it's not like it's shocking to put these 4 teams in the play-in. You're not killing your draws. But I have a feeling, and again, I could be wrong. The Suns are not going to be one of the teams booted. They're just not going to lose. And Dallas could be, to be honest. But I'm starting to have this theory that we're kind of going to get a little bit of a penance with LeBron just because they won the in-season tournament. Now you could say the same thing with Golden State because they haven't really received the penance yet. They've made playoff runs. They haven't missed the playoffs, whereas LeBron did miss the playoffs a couple years ago. So is he going to miss the playoffs again? Is the question. So that's what it really comes down to here. So for one reason and one reason only, I personally think this combination makes sense. Warriors, Suns, because then what it gives us is. Hold on a second. Make sure I got that right. Yeah, Warriors. Okay. I think it's this one. Okay, so there we go. So Warriors, Dallas, which would mean Dallas would advance, Lakers would be eliminated immediately, and for the second play-in, and this is where, again, it's just kind of WWE booking. So again, the only way we can get this matchup, and on this side, I think it's just obvious. We're going to get Knicks Hawks. There's not much to it. But I do think Dallas Golden State makes sense here. Again, I think of the four of them, again, Phoenix can lose here and still have a shot. Uh, you know, and as far as the Lakers and Warriors, I don't think that the Lakers are going to advance over the Warriors. Again, for the simple reason we get Golden State and Phoenix. And like I said, Phoenix can lose in the first round of the play-in and still be alive. And then we would have this rivalry that they've been teasing for like 3 years now. And you got Chris Paul on the Warriors, and you got the Suns with their super team meeting up in the play-in to make the playoffs. I just think it's too good to book. I think it's too hilarious, and the fans would be all over it. And again, then they can talk about how being an amazing team doesn't mean you can just coast through the year, and they're trying to push that narrative. But we would get this long anticipated grudge match where we just get a good one-off between the Warriors and Suns, and then on this side we would have the Magic and Hawks fighting it out to see who stays alive. So with the Hawks Magic, I think it has to be the Magic because the Hawks, like 3 years in a row now, they're just getting in the playoffs. I think they got freaking hosed by the Celtics, got prison pounded by the Heat the next year. They're not doing anything. They're not adding anybody. They didn't do anything in the trade deadline. I just don't think it makes sense to even put them in the playoffs. The Magic, I think they're a boring team personally, but they were obviously pushing them as this team that grinds. And I have them making the play-in when right now most people have them make, just straight up making like a 6 seed. I have them dropping a little bit because I just think it makes a little more sense. So anyway, I think again it could be Indiana in the play-in, and the result would be the same. They're going to bump the Hawks, the Bulls, whoever it would be. But I'm going to have Orlando beating Atlanta here, just because I think they're going to wait till next year and either ship some guys, and we won't see much happen with Atlanta for a while, or they're going to pick up somebody, do some kind of pretty big trade, maybe get Bronny. We're going to go into Bronny pretty soon, and do something there. Here, this is too obvious, Phoenix. Golden State would miss the playoffs. Again, it would give LeBron. There's no way they're going to have LeBron and Curry neck and neck, right? And I believe Curry's the. I could be wrong. I don't think Curry ever missed the playoffs. So you got the same amount of championships, and their accolades are pretty close. Of course, James has some accolades that, as far as the points and such, but then Curry changed the game with the 3-pointers. So really, outside of LeBron getting another championship, which I think he can do, or the in-season tournament, like I don't think they're gonna have these two guys with the same legacy. And this also brings up to the many people who brought up to me about Kevin Durant. They're finally going to give him his flowers. They're going to, they keep talking about him and they want to prove that it wasn't just the Warriors that made him good for a plethora of reasons. Dre getting suspended throughout the year. Kerr said at the end of last year when Dre punched Poole that he knew that they were not the same team. Not much has changed. They're trying to act like now all of a sudden he's this ambassador for the team. We know that's not the case. We know we're going to see some chemistry issues with the Warriors. That's why they just lost by 50 and then won by 30. Very inconsistent. And then you had Clay bragging to Booker about his 4 rings, all that. So there's no way with Chris Paul on the Warriors, all these different things. It would be the most Chris Paul thing ever, too, by the way, to go to a stacked team a couple years removed from winning it all. The year after he failed to win it all, losing to that team that he failed with. So anyway, I got Phoenix beating Golden State. I think it just makes sense, and maybe I'm not right, but I really think at least we get Warriors, Lakers in the play-in. We might not get the Mavs and the Suns too, but I think we're going to be pretty close with it. And again, I did the seeding the best I could because I noticed there's a good chance we're going to get repeats. And again, it's because we have the same teams in the playoffs. So it's not like it's going to be a completely different matchup. But they don't want to give us the same matchups. I don't think they want to give us, the exact same matchups where it's Heat Bucks. We had, and then the Heat played the Sixers, and they played, or the Celtics played the Sixers. Then the Heat played the Celtics. I don't think they're going to give us these exact same matchups, and I think they're going to try their best to steer clear of giving us like Philly Knicks, or in the first round or something, where we're getting teams that play in the same division playing each other another four games at least. Probably closer to 6-7 games, of course. So just like football, when I went into the Rams and why they had to win once the Lions won in the last week of the season, because otherwise we were going to be getting Packers Lions in the first round of the playoffs, where the contrast was so much more appealing. Same principle with basketball. I understand in basketball it's a little different because they play each other so many times and there's so many games. It's not like you're watching them and it's like, oh, we just saw this. And even if you did, they kind of build the rivalries a little bit differently. But anyway, I think this seeding makes a lot of sense. So this would give us Orlando and Boston. And I think Orlando has proven themselves. If I'm not mistaken, it would be Bogdanovic going up against his former team. So I have a feeling. I think Bard played for the Magic and Celtics. I could be wrong. I have a feeling this one's going to be one where it's closer to maybe not a 7-game series, but Orlando maybe gets a little bit of a surprise start, something like this, and then I think Boston goes ahead and puts it away. Nothing too crazy there. I think they move on, but I think Orlando extends it further than people would be expecting. Then we got Miami and Philly here. And I think both these teams are disposable if I'm being honest. Because you have playoff Jimmy. And eliminating playoff Jimmy in the first round wouldn't make that much sense. At the same time, you have playoff Jimmy who is going to be... They're showing his form right now, how he's played since the All-Star break. They were just in the finals. So are you going to boot them right in the first round? It wouldn't make too much sense. That all being said, I actually do think they're going to. And the reason I think they're going to, and have Philly eke by and get this, is because A, Philly's just a bigger draw. I think this will go 7 maybe. And B, there's a really nice narrative if Philly wins. You probably know what I'm talking about. And C, Miami, in my opinion, showed me exactly what they had planned on doing when they traded away or got rid of Kyle Lowry. That's like Jimmy Butler's best friend. I just don't think this team has anything left to offer. I think they squeezed all the juice out of the orange. and Jimmy can go nuts. It can go 7 games. Jimmy can average 45 points a game, look amazing, and then they just lose to the better team. I don't. Again, they lie. They'll say Embiid is on his deathbed, and then you'll see him strolling in, or they'll say he's healthy as a horse, he won't play. I do think by playoff times he's supposed to be ready. I could be wrong, but from what I was reading, he wasn't ruled out for the playoffs. And to be quite honest, even without him, I think they could pull off some upset, pull off a little surprise. It's not like the team they have is complete trash. But anyway, just because I think it's a little more interesting, and you'll see what I mean down the line why it's more interesting if Philly wins this. I do think Philly's going to get this done. Now, we got the Knicks playing the Bucks, and we got the Pacers playing the Cavaliers. And you know how I feel about the Pacers. I think that they are, again, I said this going into the year, I think they were going to be them and the Thunder are like the biggest surprises where people thought, oh, they might be play-in teams, they might be okay this year, and then they wound up being really good. The Thunder obviously did better than the Pacers, but the Pacers went to the in-season tournament final, so they did pretty darn good for themselves. So I genuinely think that of these two teams, it just makes the most sense for the Pacers. But again, kind of like the Heat, again, the Pacers kind of got their consolation prize with going to the in-season tournament, and B, they got a consolation prize here because they've taken a step further. It's kind of like the Magic. So the Pacers could go on a run here and knock out Cleveland. And as you know, I'm not too hot on Cleveland, but it sets up a much better, in my opinion, semis, Western Conference, Eastern Conference semis, and Eastern Conference finals if we get something like this. We'll go. This one just seems like a 7-game series, doesn't it? And I think Cleveland's going to take it. And you'll see why in 2 seconds. It makes more sense, in my opinion, for Cleveland to advance. That leaves us with the Knicks and the Milwaukee Bucks. And this could be the upset. It really could be. But if you remember last year, the Heat were that team. They knocked out the Bucks. I just don't see it happening. I went into this also many times this year. I was convinced the Knicks were going to make a trade for somebody like Cat for just a maybe even Zion, but I wasn't too sold on Zion because they have Mitch Robinson, who I think is a fan favorite. I know he's injured, but I don't think they're going to be doing anything with him anytime soon. But I think they're going to wait a year on the Knicks. I do. I think they need one more superstar so they can really push them as a genuine contender. So I do think with them and the Bucks, it's actually going to be not easy, but I do think the Bucks are going to be the first one to win in like 5 games here. My other ones are all going like 6 games. I got a couple going 7. I think we're going to see something like this. It could be 6 games, and again, this isn't perfect. Again, we still have like 20 games left on the season, so I'm just going into playoff matchups that I think make sense, the narratives I think make sense, and most importantly, you'll see the finals teams I have and why. Oh, and wait a second, I have to pick the West, don't I? Let me go through this. Alright, so on the West side, you'll see this leaves Phoenix and Denver. And it's a very interesting one because, again, are you going to bump the Suns right away? Or are you going to bump the Nuggets as the number 1 seed? Now, the reason I think Denver winning makes a lot of sense. I saw a stat about Kevin Durant where it said over the last 4 years he lost twice in the Western Conference semis, and then he lost in the first round. And then this if he were to lose in the first round this year, it would mean he lost twice in the first round and twice in the semis. Now I'm not saying that's full, concrete proof. I just think, if I'm being honest, Denver makes way more sense to advance than Phoenix. I think in an earlier prediction, I said I could see maybe the Nuggets getting booted a little earlier than people think, but I just don't think that's going to happen. They're establishing them the way they are for a reason, and sure, the Suns could knock them off. And again, this might not be the exact seeding we get. It could be the Lakers playing that. It could be different stuff. I get that. I'm just going with what I think we're going to get. Phoenix beats Golden State, and then in typical Phoenix fashion, I think turns around and loses to Denver. This will be a very competitive one. Obviously, I think this one's going to go 7 games, and Denver's going to wind up taking it. Just because, again, I don't think you knock out the champs this early. We see it with basically every sport now, where we saw it with baseball, with the Phillies and the Astros. The Braves went pretty far. We saw it with football, of course, with the Niners and the Chiefs, of course, on the other side. They wound up playing each other, but they were also in the championship the year prior. So I think they're going to push Denver. I don't think this team is going to be. You look at the Vegas odds, you look at almost anything, and I just don't see Denver getting booted this early. So Suns become the casualty. This is an interesting one. Clippers, Pelicans. Pelicans are a great dark horse, as they're called. Now, dark horses are they're great as far as if you think it's real. But from a Vegas perspective, dark horses never win because the dark horses are the ones getting, plus 2,000 or better, some kind of crazy number. And I just don't think that happens. And if you look at the Clippers line, I think of all the teams in the West, the Clippers are the most revealing. I think their line is incredibly too respectful. I don't think they should be plus 500 to win the championship, and that's where I think they're at, plus 500. They've been on a nice streak, sure, but there's other teams that have too. And in prior seasons, there's teams that have had the superstars like the Clippers, only not been injured. And they just haven't been so far ahead of all the other teams. Really, the only team ahead of the Clippers that I think is the Nuggets. The other teams, the Thunder even, last I checked, and we'll go into it again. Again, it's hard to remember every one of these. But I just remember the Clippers having significantly better odds than the Mavs and some of these other teams. And that's one of the reasons, and I'll go into them in a second, I'm not as hot on the Mavs as I was because I just think Vegas wouldn't be given the odds they are. So anyway, Clippers, Pelicans. Pelicans, again, they're getting your dark horse numbers. I think Pelicans are a very feisty team with backups, without Zion against the Suns a couple years ago. I don't. Yeah, it wasn't the play-in because they won their play-in. It was the actual playoffs, and they took them to like 6 games. They did. I forget exactly how many games, but they made it a lot closer than it could have been. Brandon Ingram went nuts, so the Pelicans will definitely hang, but I think the Clippers are going to win. Vegas likes them too much, and they got conveniently all their guys going now, all their guys strong. They got Russell Westbrook, who has gotten no love, for the longest time, and he's just been a company guy. And he is injured, but he's saying how he's going to come back, so I think that would make sense. Then we get Sacramento, Minnesota. The winner of this one, I don't think matters too much if I'm being honest, just because I think that the neither of these teams are like a real draw. I think Minnesota is a very boring team. I know a lot of people like Anthony Edwards on the other end. A lot of people like Fox, and they're fine, I guess. But I just don't think that, at least again, in my opinion, I don't see the the Wolves or the Kings doing too much. So either one of these teams could win, honestly, and it doesn't really affect the seeding too much. I do think that since I got Denver the favorites winning, I got Clippers the favorites winning. I do think I would have to lean ever so slightly here with Minnesota. Again, I just think the Kings haven't made any real moves as far as showing that they're improving from last year. And they have a decent team, but I mean, they make it where everybody in the NBA has a decent team now. So they're booking the Wolves really strong. I think the Wolves wind up taking this, and move on to the next round. A lot of people are laughing how they're going to be immediately eliminated in the first round. And again, if that's where the public's at, there's a good chance that we get the opposite. So I think it's going to be. I'm trying to get rid of this ad here. There we go. I think it's going to be the Wolves that advance, which leaves Dallas and Oklahoma City. And I'm kind of getting the same vibes with Oklahoma City that I have with Indiana. I know a lot of people love Oklahoma City, and they do kind of remind me of the Lions out of the NFL, where they could be that team who makes a run to the Western Conference. But and you'll see why, just for one reason really, I like Dallas. So we got Thunder here. I think we'll get some home wins. Dallas is known for basically doing stuff like this in the playoffs, winning at home, going to game sevens. So I think every home team wins except game seven. I think Dallas will wind up advancing. And, they completely missed the playoffs last year. Maybe that was their penance. But I don't think they're going to do anything nuts. But I do think Dallas is at least going to advance here. And then again, and going over the East, we got Boston. I got Philly, Cleveland, and Milwaukee. So now this leaves us with Cleveland playing Milwaukee and Boston playing Philly. And this is where it gets pretty interesting. And you might see why I have the seeding that I do. We got the doc versus the nurse. And, well, not yet, but we're going to. So we have Boston playing Philly. And obviously, if you've been watching my videos, that I just don't have Boston. I have Boston going to the championship and winning. They're my preseason pick. They're my 49ers. Obviously, it didn't work out too well for the Niners, but we got pretty darn close. So maybe this time we actually get it done. And I think it'll be competitive. Again, these aren't all going to be 6-7 game series, but this is a repeat from last year, a grudge match, if you will. And yeah, I think different coach. So actually, well, the Celtics have the same coach from last year, but a relatively new coach, and the Sixers obviously have Nurse now. So I think it'll be pretty close here, but I'll give it to Boston in 6. I think Boston knocks out Philly, and that's going to leave us with Milwaukee and Cleveland. And again, I went into this. I think it's pretty obvious. I think Milwaukee is going to be matched up with Boston. I said this at the beginning of the year. The only team that made any lick of sense that could say we can compete with Milwaukee is Boston. And then, of course, you have to establish Milwaukee as looking like they could be unstoppable, so you get all the money on them. That was my logic, at least. So, again, Cleveland probably does all right. Donovan Mitchell probably has a 50-point game or two. But I'm going to go ahead and give this to Milwaukee in 5. Just because, I think they're going to establish Milwaukee as a very strong team. Let's go this way. That looks a little more realistic. I don't know if they win 4 in a row. So yeah, let's just go Milwaukee in 5 here. And again, this isn't going to be perfect. I'm trying to basically do what I did with the NFL, just go into the rivalries that I think make sense, and also covering from a public perspective. If you look at the Vegas lines, all that. So this leaves us with Dallas, Minnesota, and Clippers, Denver. So Dallas, Minnesota, here's where I think Minnesota's story comes to an end. I think we see some Luka magic. Again, they're showing Luka in a slightly different light this year as far as he's just not messing around. That being said, Dallas isn't they're like plus 2,500, which I think is crazy. It's basically Vegas telling us they will not be winning the championship. I just think with Kyrie and Luka, the way they're playing, yeah, the record's not great, but to put them at plus 2,500, in my opinion, they're not going to pay that out. You're going to have a lot of people looking at Luka, how he's playing, realize they have Kyrie, and oh man, if they're just healthy and can get it going in the playoffs, then anything can happen. We saw what Luka did by himself against the Suns just a couple years ago, what he almost did against the Clippers. So, yeah, I don't think I think a lot. I think Dallas is probably going to be taking up a lot of the public's money. And I went into Dallas, Boston, why I liked them a lot in prior videos. Again, I said I was way more open in the West, but they have Israel Hamas colors, which is interesting. Dallas has Israel colors, and Boston has Hamas. And more importantly than that, I thought it was interesting. You got KP versus Luca. Not a lot of people would expect Dallas. You got the international appeal with Luca. There's a lot of things that go into it, but and Luca won't be winning MVP from everything I can see. So maybe you reward him with that. So there's a lot that could work out for Dallas, but just not positive. And then we got Clippers Denver, and this is a tough one because they just showed us Denver Boston, and Denver Boston matching up is plus 450. Those are some pretty short odds to call both sides. So it's to put in perspective, the Chiefs Niners didn't become plus 450 until we got to the championship games. When we were in the AFC and NFC championship, that matchup was like maybe it was the round before, but the playoffs were set and they were like 1 or 2 games away from the Super Bowl, and they were like plus 400. So for the Celtics and Nuggets to be there now tells me one of those teams is 100% making the finals. So we got Clippers Nuggets, and again, I think we're going to see Nuggets look really good at home, Clippers looking good, and I think the Clippers are going to take it. I do. Again, Nuggets don't lose at home, so I think maybe they drop one game at home here, and then we'll say Clippers take it in 7. Now, the reason I have the Clippers winning is twofold. You'll see now this in the East is we get the Doc versus the Nurse, and I just think it's interesting. Now another matchup we can get because I had Boston matching up with Philly, ideally, and again I didn't want to go nuts on this. It's more important we just kind of cover the narratives and spend hours in the simulator getting the exact every crevice down. But I actually think Milwaukee playing Philly and then playing Boston makes more sense. So, however we can make that happen, I think that makes more sense. So maybe just swap Boston to play Cleveland. However we can do that, I don't know. Maybe Boston plays Cleveland instead of Milwaukee, and Milwaukee plays the Sixers. So then you got Doc playing his old team, and then playing his other old team. So that would be really interesting in my opinion, and I think that we're going to get that. But I think we're definitely going to get Doc versus the Nurse because, again, the Cavaliers make some sense against the Bucks, and I know that's who I had. But again, when I did this bracket, it's just kind of like a crude breakdown. It's not exact. You know, trying to get it exact is a real pain. So I figured I would just do the breakdown and then kind of go over the narratives with you guys. And of course, it'll be a lot easier once we have the actual template, once they have the actual seating. But again, the way I lined it up, the only thing I would switch is none of the winners. Just, I think we're going to get the Doc versus the Nurse. I think we're going to get Milwaukee versus Philadelphia. Doc beats the Nurse, and then Boston's going to beat Cleveland. Especially after that crazy game we just saw between Boston and Cleveland. So that's the only thing that I wanted to point out. But then, of course, this leaves us with, Dame, and we got Drew Holiday versus his whole team, and Doc versus the super team that he won with. So all these different deals. I think you have to have this matchup, and then you throw in the fact that they are the two best teams, right? So again, this one could really go either way. You can get Milwaukee getting back there because they love Giannis, but personally, and I know they lost, but they still made it to the finals, the Super Bowl, whatever you want to call it. I'm getting San Francisco vibes from Boston, where it's like they've been banging on the door, and I think they're finally gonna get in. And I know they made the finals already, but again, kind of like the Niners, they made the Super Bowl, then they didn't, and then they got back. I think that's where Boston's gonna be when they got Drew Holiday. To me, that was the deal breaker. He's that getting KP complete championship moves, whereas Milwaukee getting Dame is the opposite of what happens when you're going to go to the championship. Typically, you get the superstar, everybody picks you, and the more cohesive team wins. Not to mention, they got the new coach. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. I know the old one was Adoka, but I heard his name. Oh, Joe. I know his name's Joe. Joe Inzula, whatever the hell his name is. But anyway, I just think they like this coach, and that's probably why they got rid of Vidoka, and they're running it back now with Joe here. I think it was his first season, and that's why they said they kind of gave him a break last year when he didn't do too well. So anyway, I think Boston here is going to beat the Bucks and move on to the finals. Now, the one reason I thought Milwaukee would be interesting, especially if they do wind up playing, like I said, Philly and then Boston, is Doc could literally do a speed run of his super teams, right? So playing the Sixers, then the Celtics, and then the third super team that he coached, which is the Clippers. To me, that's like as WWE booking as you can get. I think it might be a little too obvious if they do all three of them. So I'll settle for two. But again, it wouldn't be that. It would be because last year the reason I had the Sixers winning the whole thing, my pick last year was Sixers Clippers for anyone that remembers, and it was for Doc's redemption. I said I think Doc's gonna get his redemption. He's gonna come in. They're gonna say he's gonna choke, and he's going to finally beat his old super team, the Clippers, in the finals. And of course, he did choke, so that didn't age too well. So it would be really interesting if my narrative came true a year later. And this year it makes even more sense because now he has the opportunity to play three super teams versus two. That all being said, I just don't think it's going to be Milwaukee. I think it's going to be Boston. I think it's their year. And then on this side here, we got Dallas and the Clippers. So it's a rematch from a couple years ago. Of course, you have a couple interesting matchups. You're going to have Leonard and Russell and Kawhi, and then you got Kyrie and Luka. So it'll be exciting. And it's kind of like when LeBron got Luka. It's like, or LeBron got Kawhi. He couldn't beat or got Kyrie. He couldn't beat Golden State. He got Kyrie, and he was able to. So in this case, it would be like, okay, Luka, now he's got Kyrie. Now he's got his partner in crime. So now it's a fair match against the Clippers, unlike a couple years ago where Luka did everything himself and really came up just so short. Now, this one again, I think is going 7. And for most of the season, I would have had Dallas. I was not too hot on the Clippers, to be quite honest. The reason I decided that I think the Clippers are going to the finals is pretty simple. It's the new stadium. It was brought up by multiple people about, they bring it up about different teams. They'll say so and so is building a new stadium. I think they're going to do well. And they usually do wind up doing well. So I think with the new stadium here, it makes sense for us. They're leaving the Lakers, so they're going to have their own whatever you want to call it, their own venue and be more independent, if you will. Maybe not just be the second best team in the stadium, whatever you want to refer to them as. And there's billions of dollars that go into that. So I don't think it's a coincidence that all these guys are healthy. Vegas again has Clippers at plus 500, which is just very short odds for them in my opinion. I don't think anybody believes in James Harden and Russell Westbrook and Kawhi and George to stay healthy. So I don't think the public's going to be on them too much. So for all those reasons, I think they make sense way more than the Mavericks. You'd have to have 5 times as many people picking the Clippers to the Mavericks for them to be as big of a liability, and I just don't see that happening. So in the West, again, like the Clippers are really the only team in my opinion. You could get the Suns, Nuggets, sure, or Suns, Celtics. Again, you could get what I was talking about, where you get Doc, Bucks, Clippers. You can get a couple different matchups, and I think we're going to be pretty close with this. But I'm sticking with the Celtics because I just think you got to give eventually if you're going to act like Tatum is a superstar, and they've been pushing international guys for a bit now. I think it's high time they push the American guy. They usually go back and forth with that. Obviously LeBron got some of his, but as of recent, you had Giannis, you had Jokic. and obviously Embiid didn't get it done. But in this case, I guess you could argue Porzingis is international. But as far as superstars, Luka would make some sense in that regard. But again, it doesn't have to be every single year. So I think we do get Clippers and Boston. I think it's a nice matchup, and you have this weird tie, like with the ghost of Doc Rivers, right? Both of his old teams that he coached for, and he just happens to be right in the mix of it because he's going to be, in my opinion, playing Boston in the Eastern Conference, and then you get Clippers playing Boston. So this is what I think makes the most sense. And again, Clippers getting a new stadium, not a lot of money going to be on them, in my opinion. But again, it's all about liability. 500. Boston is like plus. Pretty soon I think they're going to be minus odds to like make the finals. It's pretty crazy how like there shouldn't be anybody on Boston just because of the fact that their odds are so short. There's no value in taking them. It's not like the NFL in my it's not there's the playing involved. You have series you got to go through. So like the NFL, you'll have a team with a first round bye, and they got to win 2 games, and then they're right there on the brink of a Super Bowl. The NBA is different. So to have a team with such short odds tells me that they really think this team's going to do something. So I think it's going to be Boston, not Denver. Again, for the matchup, it's +4 something, which is pretty darn low to pick an exact matchup. I think if you're going to pick an exact matchup, Boston Clippers makes more sense. But I'm loving Boston. I think Denver will do all right, but I really don't think they're going back to the finals. So Boston Clippers. And I don't know exactly how it's going to go. Of course, they're going to make it really exciting. Will they do something like this? They go down 3-1 and then win the next 3. I think something like that might happen, but this is what I think happens. I think we get Boston, who wins the finals, which I went into all year long, but what I hadn't gone into was the West. At the beginning of the year, I had gone into the Lakers, and I had said how if the Lakers, the in-season tournament wasn't going on at the time, so I said I think it makes some sense for the Lakers, but my biggest issue with the Lakers was I said this 100 times, if I've said it once. LeBron is not going to win another championship until his son debuts because he's going to win one with his son. That's genuinely what I believe. They copy wrestling and they did it with Rey and Dominic Mysterio. It might sound goofy. I think they're going to do they're from California, by the way. I think they're going to do the exact same thing with Braun and Bronny and have them win a championship together. And there's some interesting alpha I found on Bronny that just makes me really believe that LeBron and Bronny will be winning a championship together. That's just my opinion. So until then, I think LeBron kind of gets punished. I almost wonder if the in-season tournament was a punishment. Again, it's like giving Roman Reigns the Intercontinental Championship. It's a step down, and for him to do that and then kind of fizzle out, and even if he plays well, the team no shows in the playoffs, and furthermore, the other Los Angeles team goes instead of him. I think that would be quite interesting. So, yeah, this is kind of how I have it breaking down. I think these are some good matchups, some exciting matchups. Some of them are fresh. And like I said, on the East side, the only thing I would change here, again, in retrospect, if I could find a way to seed it better, is getting it where we have, again, we got Sixers playing the Celtics and Bucks playing the Cavs. I think to match it up, or in the round prior, I mean, we got the Sixers playing the Magic, whatever it is. I think we have to get Bucks versus the Sixers, and the Bucks beat the Sixers, so Doc beats his old team, and then he moves on and plays the Celtics. So again, some of these teams are expendable. That's why they don't matter too much, in my opinion. The Cavs, the Magic, the Heat. So however they fall, I'm not too concerned about. I'm just trying to go over the main narratives. And obviously, I think Doc is definitely playing the Bucks. But I think we're gonna get Celtics, Sixers, and then yeah, I mean Bucks, Sixers, not so yeah. So here I see how I have Bucks playing the Cavs, and the Celtics playing the Sixers, this is the one thing I think will flip. I think we'll wind up getting, again, I know the seeding's off, so they'll have to be maybe the Sixers and Cavaliers wind up flipping as far as their seeding goes. Something will have to happen. Again, there's 20 games to go, but I think it makes a lot more sense that the Bucks draw the Sixers and then the Celtics draw the Cavs or whoever, maybe the Pacers. I don't really. Again, it doesn't matter too much. But basically, we get Doc versus both of his super teams. He goes up against the Sixers, and then he goes up against the Celtics. And I think he loses to the Celtics. And again, him beating the Celtics would be interesting, especially because I have the Clippers, because that would be Doc beating all three, or at least playing all three of his super teams that he's known for. I just think. And who did he play in college? Or, I mean, not college. Who did he play for in the NBA? Didn't he play for the Hawks? If he did, that'd be pretty interesting if somehow they wound up like in every round if Doc played a former team. But no, I don't think that's going to happen. But again, I really do think he's going to play the Celtics at the very least, and probably play the Sixers too. And once I thought of that, I'm like, oh, what if they do that? Have Doc get his redemption, beat the Celtics, and then go on to play the Clippers, where this kind of all started. This idea that Doc's a failure, because that's really where it started, because he had done all right in Boston. But I don't think they're going to give us that. A, I think it's a little too obvious. And B, I just think there's going to be way too much money on Milwaukee. And C, I think the Celtics, this is their year. They just re-signed Tatum. They did, not Tatum, Brown. They did all these trades. Again, Drew Holiday, in my opinion, is the biggest giveaway. Between that and the odds, I just think it's a certainty we're going to get the Celtics. So yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. I wanted to do a deep dive for a little bit now. And again, I think we're definitely going to get a play-in of the Warriors Lakers. It's just too good not to give it to us. And I think while we're at it, we're going to get the Suns and Dallas rounding it out as the 7 and 8, because basically all four crazy super teams will be your play-in teams, which I find hilarious. And then on the east side, of course, I think it just makes sense that we have a lot of Doc versus former teams. You know, Jimmy will probably go nuts, but I don't see him doing anything too crazy. And then again, I like Doc versus Nurse. That's why I would flip the Cavaliers and the 76ers. I think you have to do that just so we can get Sixers versus Bucks. But yeah, Celtics, Clippers, and I got the Celtics winning. So I don't see it changing. Again, I'm open to reassess. Like, if people bring up good arguments for teams in the West, I'll be happy to say, yeah, I think that makes sense. The East, that hasn't really been the case. I went into the Doc narrative is appealing, just not enough for me, and not enough for me to jump off of the Celtics, who I've liked all year, just because I think the Celtics make the most sense. But yeah, you can let me know what you think. If you think, no, I think maybe you think the Rockets are going to sneak in, or you think I'm disrespecting the Kings, they're going to go further, or whatever you may think. Just let me know. But I think I have this pretty over the target. I might not have every single matchup right. I get that. The seeding might not be perfect. Again, in my own bracket here, just again envision flipping the Cavs and Sixers. I think that makes much more sense. And then having the Suns playing the Warriors, where in the second round of the play-in. I think a lot of these matchups make a lot of sense, and they're entertaining. They're rivalries, and at the same time, they won't be paying out the public by having a team like the Bucks or the Suns or a liability like the Mavericks win the thing. So yeah, you can let me know what you think. Obviously, I'm curious what you guys think. I know a lot of you guys think the Lakers are going to do it, which I understand. I'm just pretty adamant we will not see LeBron win a championship until his son debuts, and that'll be my next video. I'm noticing a lot of interesting things with Bronny James, so I'll be going into some Bronny specialties, what I think they're going to do with him, kind of like I did with Wemby. If you guys remember when he was minus 200 to win Rookie of the Year, I told everybody it's free money. I said there's no way he's not going to win it. I said and I even went into how they're probably going to purposely give him the Giannis treatment so they can give Greg Popovich all the credit in the world for building him up, even though obviously it has nothing to do with it. They're just he's an international draw, so of course he was going to win Rookie of the Year, but they're going to make it where it seems like, oh, he came in and he was a little green. He had some issues where he couldn't stay on the court too long, and Popovich really got him going, just like he had Tim Duncan and David Robinson. So it seems like they're repeating that story. But yeah, minus 200 is where Wemby started Rookie of the Year, and it was so darn obvious he was going to win it. So now he's like minus 5,000 or something crazy like that, just because there's no way he shouldn't win it. So yeah, I think we've been over the target pretty well this year. Again, a couple funny misses. We're not going to get them all. I basically had, like I said, the Spurs in the place of not as high of a seed, but I had all the teams that I think are going to make the playoff play in. All the teams that are currently in the playoff play in. We hit 9 of the 10 of them. The only one we didn't have was the Wolves. We had the Spurs in there instead. And then on the East side, in place of the Magic, I thought a team like the Pistons actually made more sense. I thought they were a more fun team, but of course that was an epic fail too. So again, I have some really over the target hits, and then some laughable ice cold misses. There's like no in between with me, as you guys know. So yeah, just again, let me know what you think. I hope you guys like this. I like doing the brackets because it kind of makes it where you can see each matchup. You can kind of see what the ramifications are for each team winning and losing. And you might see some narratives of your own in here that I missed. Like, oh yeah, you got Pat Bev on the, whatever it may be. So, yeah, just let me know what you think. And I always appreciate everybody that comments, everybody that shows support, or, everywhere. We're kind of all over now. We got the Patreon, we got the Discord. I'm growing some other stuff that's going to be pretty fun. And it's there's a lot of stuff that I think is going to be in this playoff, especially making so many people just understand how scripted it is. Even college today, the Pacific game specifically, but even before that, the Murray State game, I saw no less than 15, 20 tweets when I went to you just type in like in Google, you just type in the name of the team, check the score, and if you scroll down a little bit, it comes up with the Twitter news, and all the Twitter news was to the effect of, I've never seen this bad of a game in all my life. You can't do this on accident. This team just beat California. This is ridiculous. These guys are selling. This is scripted. So it's not just the NFL. It's not just the NBA. It's college. People are waking up and seeing, okay, if one sport can be rigged, if the world can be rigged, all these different things, the stock market, presidency, a lot of people are saying, I think that's rigged for sure. All these different deals. Then, and by the way, we will be doing wagers on the 24 election, and I think we're going to do a pretty darn good job. But my point is, I I don't see why people don't see why the NBA would also be scripted, and more people are saying it. More people are noticing this stuff. You have to script it. It's just too ridiculous. So yeah, I might be off on a couple small details, but I think for the most part, I think we're going to be right here. I really do. Uh, you know, we might not have every single win, just like the NFL, but we were pretty darn close. We came as close as you can get. We got the exact matchup, and we just got, obviously, the team we had winning didn't do it. The new Michael Jordan did it. So, yeah, this is what I think happens, and hopefully this will be the first occasion. And again, it's not like it's been 10 years. We only started last year, so we had an NBA season where, again, I thought we'd get the Doc story. So I liked Clippers and Sixers. That did not work out. Once the Sixers got booted, though, I would say we were one of the only channels to jump on the Heat and say they were going to beat the Celtics. Furthermore, when they went up 3-0, I was the first one to say, I think they're going to blow this, make it 3-3, and then the Celtics are going to lose Game 7. That sequence of videos is where not most of, but a giant amount of subscribers came over because, at the risk of sounding cocky, they were incredibly impressed that somebody would predict not only a team would blow a 3-0 lead, but they would also win Game 7, and that team being a team that had no business going to the finals. I had noticed something the way they were pushing Jimmy, and I thought it was going to be them, and everybody was saying Lakers Celtics. Like, it was just so obvious that I didn't think we were going to get that. So that's why I thought, okay, Heat Nuggets. Nobody will see it coming, but it kind of makes sense. So we didn't have that at the beginning of the year, like the NFL, where we kind of nailed it early on. But we were able to reassess once our team got booted, and we were able to get, again, do a good job of making money off Vegas, picking the Heat to beat the Celtics, picking the Nuggets to beat the Lakers, and unfortunately, like I said, I thought the Heat would beat the Nuggets, but they didn't. So, yeah, Clippers, Celtics. Let me know what you think, and if you think I'm missing something, or if there's a better narrative out there. And like I said, my next video, I'll probably be going into Bronny James, just because there's a lot of interesting seeds that they're planning with him. So take care and happy earnings.